In this case, Sophia's parents are the plaintiff, while the Hong Kong government is the defendant. So the debate starts. The plaintiff speaks first.
Thank you. We would first like to establish a duty of care between the government and Sophia. The first link we're going to raise is the foreseeability of the duty of care. According to Food Regulation of the Public Health and Municipal Services Ordinance, Chapter 132, and from the Risk Assessment in Food Safety, sulfur dioxide is not permitted in fresh meat and is described as a chemical which may induce allergic reaction, including asthmatic attacks. Thus, the government clearly understands that sulfur dioxide can cause negative effects in human bodies. The responsibility of government to ban the application of sulfur dioxide as food preservatives to protect all citizens from harm is clearly foreseeable.
Thank you for what you have said, but we believe that there is a lack of foreseeability in harm. According to the Chemical Encyclopedia, there is no proof that sulfur dioxide will trigger immediate health effects or death to people. What has been proved is just that sulfur dioxide has long-term health effects like asthma triggers, but there is no clear evidence to show that death can be caused. And according to the current Public Health and Municipal Services Ordinance, there is a restriction on the maximum level of sulfur dioxide allowed in dry foods, which is 1000 ppm. We have already taken into account the diverse effects of sulfur dioxide beyond this level on humans' health. So, it is not foreseeable that sulfur dioxide below this enforced level will still cause death in both normal people and asthmatics. We know that asthmatics may still drink soft drinks, which also contains sulfur dioxide. However, if taken with precaution in small amounts, they will not suffer from sensitivity. Also, asthma attack may not necessarily lead to death. Sophia has encountered attacks before, but she didn't die. This case of death is exceptional and therefore is not foreseeable.
In order to establish a duty of care between the government and Sophia, the second point we would like to point out is the proximity between the government and Sophia. Citizens are directly affected by the policies issued by the government, including food regulations. There exists a close and direct relationship between the government and the people living in Hong Kong, including Sophia. For example, in this case, citizens, including Sophia, are directly affected by the government's policy of not forbidding sulfur dioxide from being used as a food preservative and being used in apricots. So, the duty of care in the proximity between the government and Sophia in this case is clearly proved.
Well, we don't believe what you have said is true, because we believe that there is a sufficiently close and direct relationship between us and Sophia. We can evaluate two ingredients of a proximate relationship. First is whether there is foreseeable damage, and second, if there is a high degree of control on the situation. We have already proved that there is a lack of foreseeable damage in this case. The government has low degree of control on what people choose to eat. There's no authority to impose control to forbid consumption of foods as long as they are not considered as illegal. However, in this case, it gives rise to another recourse, a liability. The WHO has in fact encouraged parents to be aware of sulfur allergy in their child and should avoid them purchasing and eating preserved food with sulfur dioxide as a precaution against asthma attack. There is a close and direct relationship between the parent and child, and in fact, they have contributory negligence.
The third thing I would like to point about to establish a duty of care between the government and Sophia is the reasonableness of the duty of care. It is reasonable for food departments in Hong Kong and in Hong Kong government to identify any food preservative, including sulfur dioxide, which may induce negative health effects to citizens. The government should bear sole responsibility to prevent any potentially harmful substances from being applied in any food products, including apricots. This is the reason for food regulation to exist in the first place. Then I would like to elaborate on the breach of duty. At present, the maximum level of sulfur dioxide allowed in dried fruit under Public Health and Drug and Municipal Services Ordinance is 1,000 ppm. However, according to U.S. Food and Drug Administration alert, scientific reports have stated that 10 milligrams of sulfites ingested as one sitting could pose a life-threatening hazard to a sulfur-sensitive individual. With regard to the fact that the standards used by US FDA is generally accepted as accurate ones, and people who have asthma are obviously sulfate-sensitive individuals. Hong Kong government breached its duty of care by allowing sulfur dioxide level to a degree much higher than what one with asthma can afford. The harm, which was the death of Sophia, caused by such a breach is undoubtedly serious. Then I would like to elaborate on the causation of this duty of care. Would Sophia have not died but for Hong Kong government's improper policy on food regulation on food preservatives? Including sulfur dioxide in food is obviously a material contribution to Sophia's death, because that allows Sophia to ingest excess sulfur dioxide in apricots. The intention of setting up food regulations is to protect citizens from deaths or diseases caused by food. So the consequence of Sophia's death is not remote from the government's decision to allow sulfur dioxide from being added to food preservative or to amend or not to amend food regulations.
Well, however, we think that it is not just and reasonable to impose duty of care. In terms of commercial practicality, it is not practical to forbid the use of sulfur dioxide in any items that interact with our life. We know that many food products and also cleaning products have this chemical for preservation and cleansing purposes. And in terms of public policy, there are immunities. It is unreasonable to open the floodgate for public policy, because in the future, then tons of millions of people will come and sue us regarding issues of sulfur dioxide. As we can see that the 3 points that justify duty of care is not being established, we believe we don't have the duty of care, and therefore there's no breach of duty of care.
After listening to the argument of both sides, we can make the following conclusion. Regarding the foreseeability, it is obvious that government understands the potential harm of using sulfur dioxide in food additives. Currently, there is regulation restricting the amount of sulfur dioxide to be 1,000 ppm, which is considered to be a safe level. And government has already fulfilled the duty of care to general public so as to prevent them from getting harmed due to the use of sulfur dioxide. Regarding the proximity, as Sophia is only a 6-year-old child, it is believed that Sophia's parents bear the greatest responsibility and has the most direct link to her health. Exposure to sulfur dioxide containing food should be prevented by Sophia's parents instead of by the government. Regarding the reasonableness, it is generally accepted that banning all sulfur dioxide as food preservative is unreasonable, and it has no effect to the majority of the general public, and only a small group of people will show sensitivity to certain kind of food additive. Similar to this, it is also unreasonable to ban the use of sugar in soft drinks because there are people suffering diabetes. In conclusion, we believe that the government does not have the duty of care to single individuals as long as it fulfills the duty of care to general public. Hence, the government is not liable for Sophia's death.